You don't have to manipulate or maneuver to be seen. You don't have to force open what God has already unlocked. Your authenticity is your access. Your vulnerability is your vehicle. And when you stop hiding behind who you thought you had to be, you'll discover that the real you is more than enough. Not just to take up space, but to change it. There comes a moment in your journey when the roles you've been playing start to feel tight, uncomfortable, even suffocating. At one point, those roles may have served you. They helped you navigate a season, survive a storm, or secure a space. But just because something served you in one season doesn't mean it's meant to stay with you in the next. And yet, we often hold on. We hold on because the role is familiar. It's safe. It gives us something to point to, something to cling to, something to explain who we are. But the problem is God is calling you to rise, and you can't rise while you're clinging to what no longer fits the call on your life. There's a shedding that happens in the rising, a letting go, a necessary release of identities that were wrapped around expectations instead of truth. We've all been there, trapped in the role of the strong one, the quiet one, the reliable one, the background supporter, the fixer, the people pleaser. And while those roles may have gained us approval or praise, they were never meant to define us. God never called you to be a role. He called you to be a reflection of his image, bold, dynamic, evolving, and real. But shedding those roles is uncomfortable. It shakes the foundation of relationships that were built on your ability to perform within them. People get unsettled when you stop playing the part they assigned to you. When you stop saying yes to things that drain you. When you stop showing up as less than who you really are, just to make them feel more. But the discomfort of others is not your responsibility. The only responsibility you have is to answer the call that's been burning in your spirit. And that call is not tied to a performance, it's tied to your purpose. Every time you shrink to fit into a space that was never meant for your full self, you delay your own rising, you silence your own voice, you dim your own light. And then you wonder why you feel stuck, why you feel overlooked, why you feel invisible. It's because the role has become a prison and God is trying to break you out. You were not designed to be boxed in. You were not created to live on repeat. There's a new dimension of you that is trying to emerge, but it can't do that while you're clinging to outdated labels and limiting beliefs. The real you, she's been whispering under the surface. She's been waiting for permission to come forth. She's been yearning for freedom, for space, for oxygen. And God is not going to elevate a version of you that was only meant to get you through a previous chapter. He's making room for the woman who's brave enough to say, that role got me here, but it's not who I am. That takes courage. That takes discernment. That takes a willingness to walk away from the applause of the familiar to pursue the authenticity of your future. And let's be real, letting go of a role can feel like loss. Because even if it wasn't healthy, it was consistent. Even if it wasn't your truth, it gave you something to hold on to. But God is calling you higher, and rising means releasing. It means trusting that what he has for you is greater than what you've had to let go of. It means believing that your identity is rooted in him, not in what you've done, who you've been to other people, or how well you've maintained an image. That's a step. You can't rise and hide at the same time. You can't walk in freedom while clinging to a role that was designed to keep you confined. The real you has dreams that don't fit inside the old container. The real you has power that can't be contained by roles built on other people's comfort. You have to be willing to say no to what no longer serves the woman you're becoming. That's not selfish. That's sacred. That's stewardship. Because you're not just protecting your peace, you're protecting your rise. Rejection is one of the most painful experiences we encounter. It strikes at the very core of our desire to belong, to be accepted, to be seen and loved. Whether it's a friend walking away, an opportunity slipping through your fingers, a closed door in a season you thought was your breakthrough, rejection can feel like failure, like you're not enough, like something is wrong with you. But what if the very thing that felt like rejection was actually God's redirector, wasn't meant to break you, but to build you? What if the closed door wasn't punishment, but protection? When you are in the middle of it, it's hard to see clearly. Your heart is bruised, your mind is filled with questions, and you wonder why God allowed it to happen. But often it's not until later that you begin to realize the door that shut in your face was the one that would have led you into an identity that wasn't yours. The people who walked away weren't assigned to your destiny. The circle you tried to fit into was too small to hold the magnitude of your calling, and the role you were trying to play wasn't aligned with who God created you to be. God allows rejection not to hurt us, but to help us. Because sometimes we won't leave what's familiar until it starts to feel like it's rejecting us. We cling to comfort, we hold on to toxic spaces, we try to make things work long after God has said it's time to move. So he lets it fall apart, not to destroy us, but to develop us. Because development rarely happens in comfort, it happens in the breaking, in the stripping, in the moments when we feel most uncertain. That's where God does his best work. There are times when God will allow you to be rejected so that you can finally be rerouted to your real purpose. That job that turned you down, it would have distracted you from your divine assignment. That person who ghosted you, they couldn't handle the weight of your truth. That opportunity that didn't work out, it would have pulled you into performing rather than positioning you to walk in power. Rejection is not always a loss. It's often a setup, a divine pause, a spiritual interruption meant to keep you aligned with heaven's blueprint for your life. The enemy wants you to internalize rejection, to see it as a reflection of your worth. But God wants you to see it as protection, as redirection, as his way of preserving what he's placed inside of you. Because what you carry is too sacred to be placed in the wrong environment. Your identity is too valuable to be shaped by people who only love you for what you can do, not for who you are. And your purpose is too significant to be attached to a platform that doesn't recognize your true calling. Sometimes God will even allow rejection to reveal to you who you really are. Because when everything is stripped away, when the affirmation stops, when the applause dies down, when the people walk away, you're left with the raw truth of your identity. And that's where your power begins to rise, in the silence, in the solitude, in the sacred space where God reminds you, you are still chosen, you are still called, you are still mine. It's in those moments of rejection that you discover resilience. You learn how to trust God, not because it feels good, but because you need him. You develop a deeper faith, not in outcomes, but in the character of God. You stop leaning on validation and start leaning on revelation. You stop chasing rooms that weren't built for you and start preparing for the ones God is preparing you for. Rejection exposes the false identities we've worn to gain access and forces us to return to the source of our true identity. God's plan for your life is not threatened by who left, what didn't work out, or the doors that closed. In fact, sometimes those closed doors are the greatest blessings in disguise. Because when you're rejected by what wasn't for you, you're positioned to receive what is for you. And that's when you start to rise, not just in opportunity, but in truth, in power, in freedom. Because you're no longer living for acceptance, you're living from acceptance. There's a certain kind of pressure we carry when we believe we have to be perfect to be used. A weight that tells us unless everything in our life is polished, controlled, and picture ready, we can't walk in purpose. But that's not how God works. He's not waiting for you to reach some unattainable level of perfection before he moves. He's not requiring the flawless version of you before he opens doors. What he's after is authenticity. God isn't making room for the polished mask you've been wearing. He's making room for the real, raw, truth-filled version of you, the one who shows up with faith even when she still has questions. It's easy to believe the lie that we have to perform to be loved, that we have to have it all together to be chosen. But the truth is, God chooses us in spite of our imperfections, not because we've somehow outgrown them. The rooms he's preparing for you aren't contingent on you being perfect. They're contingent on you being honest about your journey, honest about your struggles, honest about your growth, because it's in your honesty that healing flows. It's in your vulnerability that others find permission to be real too. And that's the power God wants to release through you. When you show up as someone you're not, you attract rooms that weren't meant for you. You begin to operate out of a false identity, constantly trying to maintain an image that isn't sustainable. That's why you feel drained. That's why you feel like you're always striving, because you're leading with what you think people want instead of who God called you to be. But the moment you lay down the need to be perfect and pick up the courage to be real, everything shifts. That's when alignment happens. That's when divine appointments are made, because you're no longer trying to fit into a space, you're flowing from a place. God is making room for the version of you that's willing to be seen without the mask. The version that doesn't pretend she has it all figured out, but still dares to show up anyway. That's the kind of woman he's raising up in this season, bold enough to admit she's still becoming, but brave enough to step into the assignment anyway. Because authenticity is powerful. It carries a frequency that fate can't imitate. It unlocks doors that hustle never could. And it creates space for others to breathe, to believe, to begin again. So many people are hiding behind perfection, thinking it's their ticket to purpose. But perfection is a prison. It keeps you stuck in cycles of performance and comparison. It makes you feel like you have to do more, be more, prove more, just to be worthy. But God already called you worthy, not because you got it all right, but because he's using your story, the real one, as a vessel of impact. He's not using your curated highlight reel. He's using the process, the pain, the lessons, the healing, the messy middle. That's what qualifies you. You don't have to have all the right words. You don't need the perfect presentation. You just need to be honest enough to say, this is who I am, and I'm trusting God to use this. That kind of surrender opens supernatural doors, because God doesn't need your image. He needs your yes. A yes that isn't dependent on applause. Yes, that isn't based on approval. A yes that says, even in my brokenness, I know I'm still called. That's the kind of spirit that changes atmospheres. The room God is preparing for you requires your presence, not your perfection. It's your story, your scars, your surrender that will make the difference, not your ability to put on a front. You've tried the performance, but God is calling you to show up in power, and power only flows where there's truth. You can't pour out what you're not connected to. And if you're disconnected from your real self, how can you truly serve others? There is a shift happening. God is elevating the real ones. The ones who don't fake heal, but are actually walking out their healing. The ones who've been in the valley and aren't ashamed to say so. The ones who know they're still a work in progress, but still show up with faith. That's who the room is for. That's who the favor is chasing. That's who the oil flows through. Not the ones trying to impress, but the ones willing to be authentic. We often think our past is something we have to hide, something that disqualifies us from walking in purpose. We look at the mistakes, the detours, the broken pieces, and we wonder how God could ever use someone with that kind of story. But the truth is, your past is not a liability. It's a part of your preparation. The very things you thought would take you out are the things God is using to build you up. Every scar, every failure, every moment you thought was wasted is being woven into something purposeful. God is not afraid of your past. He's not surprised by your story. In fact, he plans to use it. You see, we live in a world that celebrates perfection, but heaven celebrates transformation. God doesn't need a polished past to launch a powerful future. He's not looking for the ones who have never fallen. He's looking for the ones who got back up, the ones who allowed the wilderness to shape them, the ones who didn't give up when it got hard, the ones who let the pain mold their purpose. What you went through didn't break you. It built a depth in you that you wouldn't have had any other way. And that depth, that's what qualifies you to lead, to speak, to rise. Your testimony isn't just for you. It's for the person who thinks they've gone too far to be redeemed. It's for the woman who's still in the middle of her mess, unsure if she'll ever come out. It's for the one who feels forgotten, ashamed, overlooked. When you share your story, you don't just release words, you release hope, you release healing. Because it tells people they could do it for me, he can do it for you too. And that's what real ministry looks like. It's not perfection, it's transparency wrapped in grace. The enemy will try to keep you quiet by using your past against you. He'll whisper that your story disqualifies you, that your failures define you, that you're too broken to be used by God. But the devil is a liar. God knew every detail of your life before you took your first breath. He knew about the detours, the heartbreaks, the mistakes, and he still called you, still anointed you, still chose you, because he's not looking for the qualified. He qualifies the called, and what qualifies you is not a flawless past, but a surrendered heart. There is something powerful about a person who owns their past and walks in freedom anyway. Not because they've erased their history, but because they've been redeemed through it. When you stop hiding what you've been through, you rob shame of its power. You silence the lies that say you're not enough. You stand in your truth and declare, yes, I've been through it, but I'm still standing. And that kind of boldness, it can't be manufactured. It comes from surviving what was meant to destroy you and deciding that your story will give God glory. So many people are waiting to be perfect before they move. They're waiting to be fully healed, fully ready, fully polished before they step into purpose. But healing is a process, and your purpose doesn't wait for perfection. God will use you while you're still becoming. He'll send you into rooms where your honesty becomes the key that unlocks freedom for others. He'll position you in places where your thoughts speak louder than any sermon, because your authenticity is the bridge to someone else's breakthrough. Your past doesn't disqualify you, it actually authenticates your assignment. It means you've been through something. It means you've seen God show up in the valley. It means you have authority in areas where others are still searching for answers. And when you speak, you don't just speak from theory, you speak from experience. That's why you carry a different weight. That's why your presence shifts atmospheres, because you've lived through what others only talk about. God specializes in turning broken stories into beautiful testimonies. He takes what the enemy meant for evil and turns it for good, not by erasing the past, but by redeeming it, by shining light on the very areas you thought would disqualify you. Because that's where his glory shows up the most, not in your perfection, but in your surrender. Not in your image, but in your impact. And that impact is rooted in the fact that you're not just telling people what's possible, you're living proof of it. There's something sacred about the hidden seasons of life, the moments when it feels like nothing is moving, nothing is shifting, and no one sees what you're carrying. It's in those silent, behind-the-scenes places where God does some of his deepest work. The world may be looking for platforms and applause, but God is looking for roots. He's not rushing to put you on display. He's working to establish something unshakable inside of you. Because elevation without foundation is dangerous. So when it feels like you've been overlooked or forgotten, trust that it's not punishment, it's preparation. God hides what he values. Just like a seed must be buried before it can grow, there are times when God will tuck you away to protect the potential inside of you. You might be craving visibility, but God is craving depth. You might want exposure, but he wants endurance. Because when the time comes for you to rise, you can't afford to crumble under the weight of what you weren't ready to carry. So he hides you, not to hold you back, but to make sure you're rooted enough to sustain what he's about to release. In hiddenness, you learn how to trust God when there's no audience. You learn how to worship without a microphone, how to pray without a platform, how to remain faithful when it looks like no one is watching. And that right there, that's what forms character. That's what shapes integrity. That's what keeps you anchored when storms come and when favor finds you. Because if you can be faithful in the quiet, God can trust you with the sound. If you can handle silence with grace, you'll carry influence with humility. The problem is we're often tempted to rush the process, to push ourselves into rooms we're not ready for, to demand recognition before we've developed the strength to carry it. But there's a cost to being seen too soon. Visibility can expose what maturity hasn't yet healed. Influence can magnify the insecurities you never confronted. And if your identity is not rooted in who God says you are, the attention of others can become your addiction. That's why God will keep you hidden, so that your worth is never dependent on who claps, who comments, or who calls your name. There are treasures found in obscurity. There are lessons that can only be learned in the waiting, in the quiet places, in the seasons where it feels like nothing is happening. But in reality, everything is happening. God is pruning you, shaping you, refining you. He's teaching you how to obey without needing to be seen. He's developing the kind of resilience that doesn't come from comfort, but from consecration. Because the rise he's preparing you for isn't just about elevation. It's about transformation. It's not about being popular. It's about being powerful. When God finally reveals you, it won't be because you manipulated your way into visibility. It won't be because you fought for a seat at a table he never called you to. It'll be because he built something in you that couldn't stay hidden any longer. You won't have to knock down doors. The doors will open on their own. You won't have to shout to be seen. Your fruit will speak for itself. Because when it's God's time, everything aligns, everything flows. And there will be no denying that you were kept, covered, and cultivated for such a time as this. The hidden season is holy. It's the place where God detoxes your soul from comparison and competition. It's where he purifies your motives and clarifies your assignment. It's where he strips away the noise of what others expect and amplifies the sound of his voice. Don't despise it. Don't rush it. Don't try to escape it. Instead, lean into it. Learn from it. Let it do the deep work. Because the more hidden you are in him, the more secure you'll be when the spotlight comes. And make no mistake, the spotlight will come. The room God is preparing for you already has your name on it. The assignment already has your anointing assigned to it. But until that moment, your job is to be faithful, to serve in silence, to grow in the shadows, to build when no one is watching. Because the quiet season isn't wasted. It's sacred. It's strategic. It's strategic. It's setting the stage for a rise that isn't just loud, it's lasting.